Everybody worldwide, Chris Zena, Chris Merton here, behind the glass doors.
Yeah, we're global.
So look, we stuff does not always go to plan.
No, it does not.
And sometimes you open an email or you see a project and you think, oh, I'm not going to say it, but right,
yeah.
and you have to course correct and get it back on track. So today we were going to have a chat around some of those disaster stories that have occurred. I know you've been in your industry many years, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had a few.
Yes.
On your
and the majority of these disaster stories are not from this agency. So, but in most of the time, especially from a design point of view, the reason why things kind of go off the rails sometimes is mainly a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? So, and that can be when you have a large group of people who are all making decisions, but which isn't always necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you'll have boards of people which have to make decisions to try to move a project forward. But the hard part is when you have groups of people who have different opinions of what they want.
So they would say, we want to change this, and you change that. And say, oh no, we want to change it.
Right. So it's always good. I always say it's always good to have a group of people, but still with kind of like someone spearheading the direction in terms of the feedback, or these are what we were trying to do. Because
so before that feedback comes to you, everyone's had an input, and it's feedback.
Right. And that's usually when it all kind of goes wrong, is because by the time it's over, you look at the project and it's kind of a weird mishmash of all these different things, and then everyone's like, "Oh, that doesn't work at all." It's like, well, yeah, we kind of thought that. But I think too, one of the things that it's always tricky, because our industry is all about trying to find the line, right? You're trying to find the line between trying to achieve what they want and what the client wants, but also what you can kind of bring to the table as well. But it's always hard when you have a lot of decision makers making those decisions, because it goes in so many different directions, and it's not this kind of smooth path to, the final product.
Yeah.
But you also have things where, I mean, I had projects in my career where you'll do a design, everything will be great, and it'll look good, and you feel really proud of what you've done, and you send it to the client or clients, and they'll say, yeah, all that stuff, just get rid of it. I don't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't. So everything that was designed or made it kind of visually compelling pulls the whole thing out, and they say, this is good. And then by the time the project's done, it's like, this feels very boring and very template-like,
Back to the first version, somebody changed.
Which is so tricky, because again, what we said kind of in the last episode was that design is subjective regardless, right?
Yeah.
So. But it is a visual medium. It's something that people see in front of them. They can look at it and they'll make decisions based on what they see and what they like, and which is great. But you have to find that path of like making decisions and sticking to those decisions and moving forward with that. Because when you sit on it too long, and it's like what we said before, where sit on it too long and you're in this one kind of space, you get too hung up on things, and then you just don't have this ability to be able to make a difference to it. So.
And the project then for that doesn't flow, right? If it's kind of at that point, you can slow it down.
Very tricky. Yeah. But you still do whatever you can to still make it work. So if they say, oh, now I don't like it anymore because it has no design to it. It's like, okay, well, we can add in a few of these elements that we had in the first one, and then see if we can find a hybrid medium between boring and not interesting anymore, and a little bit more kind of like, commercial.
And there's a balance there, isn't there, of trying to use your expertise when it comes to design work, and trying to manage the client's expectations and what they think they want in the design, because they don't always align with the sound of it. It reminds me of a story from many years ago. I used to work for the local newspapers, and I was in my early 20s then, was I? Gee, that sounds like a long time ago. And I just joined the company. I'd inherited a really big car dealership in Perth. I was looking after their advertising for. They had a back page ad on the local paper every single week. And it was used cars, so obviously they were selling, and they needed fresh ad every week. So they would buy the artwork. So one week the ad went in, all fine, happy days. And the dealer principal here, lovely man, but very kind of business-like and old school, and wanted stuff done a certain way, which is fine. He was paying for the ads. The next week came around as a weekly publication, and I didn't change something internally, which meant instead of his new artwork for the new cars going in the following week, the old one went in with all the cars that had already sold.
Oh, no.
And he'd been paying thousands for this ad, by the way. So And I hadn't realized, he phoned me first and said, what the? Well, what you said to me.
Sure.
So obviously we had to credit him, and I got a slap on the wrist and I kind of apologized. I vowed to never make that mistake again. As luck would have it, the following week, again, it was irrelevant to the customer, but something else went wrong. It wasn't my fault this time. It was something out of my control. Meaning the same ad from 3 weeks ago had gone in for a third time.
Oh, no.
And you can imagine, the Tuesday the paper came out, off the press, got it in foot, and made my heart just... and my boss at the time, who... bless her, I won't mention her name, but she was a lovely lady. She's since retired, and but a real good mentor for me. She said, Chris, she said, problems are not like a fine wine, a red wine. They're not going to get better with age. You need to own this and get on the front foot. So I had to phone the dealer principal. He hadn't seen it yet. I said, look, we had that chat last week when I said it would never happen again. And she also said to me, and don't say it's their fault, it's someone else's fault. You've got to shift the button.
You learn to own it.
He doesn't care what's gone wrong. He cares at the outcome.
And that's a big life lesson as well.
Of course it is. So I phoned up, and you know what? He was probably more accommodating of the second mistake because I had owned it and come. I think the fact he had seen it without being told the first time. Problem. So I learned then that if something does go wrong or off track, you've just got to get onto it, make it right. Make it right.
And there are other situations. I'll do this one quick, but a long time ago, it was like 2000. I was an art director for PlayStation.com. And we were working on the new not PlayStation, Macy's.com. And we were working on a new website for Macy's New York, and won the account. But the issue was that Macy's had their own creative team in-house, right? And the idea was they were going to send their creative team to our offices. We basically created a whole new meeting space and put new desks in and everything to bring in the Macy's creative team, which is great. And we went forward based on the amount of R&D. There was so much money spent on R&D and focus groups and all these things to kind of say, what is Macy's, in terms of their history and what they kind of were in terms of a brand. And so we brought that creative team in, and we all started working on this new website that we were going to present to the Macy's board to kind of show them the direction we were going. And we started building it all out, and we put all the designs together, and we were ready for the presentation. Now, little did I know that in the background, that team, which they're an amazing team, I just think they had a different vision of what they believed that it should have been. And so at the time, they were creating their own version of what they believed the direction that we should be taking without anybody's knowledge. They'd done it on their own. So the day came and we presented to the board, lights went out, big screen, showed them all the different visuals that we were working on from the website. Done, clapping, good job, everybody. All of a sudden the lights go back out again. And a new design was kind of presented to the screen. And this one was more kind of like pinks and black and silver, and it was more trendy and had a little bit more style. Looking back on it now, remembering that moment, it was very just like so taken back. But I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, that was kind of a cool design. And the me of now would be like, wow, that's a cool direction. But at the time, based on all that money and everything that was worked on in terms of what they were as a brand, that's what we presented to the board. So that was a tough day. Well, I think what we ended up doing was making kind of like a little bit of both. Like it was what we actually shown was correct, but there was actual small elements that we could kind of bring
across.
But man, that was and that taught me a lot about the industry as well, where there's those little kind of cloak and dagger moments in there. I felt like a Martin Scorsese film because you found out at the last minute where it's like they're working on this project, and we'd all had great meetings and everything. I just think internally they felt a little bit kind of disheartened because we won that account, and they also had their own creative team, and we brought them in as being a way to kind of stay collaborating
almost sometimes.
But I mean, I think at the end, it's a long time ago, but it was one of those things too where you just learn. You learn from these experiences and you kind of move forward with it.
I think without getting too philosophical, this is not a philosophy podcast.
Well, it could be. I mean, we're a global audience now. I think they're interested.
I think in life, people, they don't mind things not going to plan as long as it's dealt with. As long as you can course correct and get...
Well, I mean, it's always going to be those situations. That's usually the whole point of this industry, is that everything can't always go to plan exactly because there are a lot of moving parts. And so every one of these experiences that we've talked about, you learn how to kind of navigate them and figure out a way through, because you could kind of like throw your hands up and be like, oh, well, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But you don't have that luxury to do that. You have to find a way to make it work.
You know, I guess in most situations, there would be elements of both opinions, if that's what I can call them, that you can take in to create the kind of overriding like design or whatever it may be, or project. So I
got one more. I will be super quick.
No, please.
Well, this one's my favorite because it's background soup is what I call it. Right?
Okay.
So this was, again, a long time ago. So designs a long time ago were very small in width.
Yeah.
So this was at a time, I think, when we had like 800 pixels to work in.
Okay.
And even if you go back and I look at like PlayStation and Macy's, they're like that big.
Right.
It's ridiculous, right? But that was what it was. That's how it was back in the day. Anyway, when you had those 800 pixel smaller sites, you had a lot of space for when it started to have larger screens, right? And in the background, you would always do something different with it. You would try to either keep it real clean and then the design would be really tiny, or you'd do something in the background where you'd add a texture, or you'd put something in the background to keep it more interesting.
Yeah.
MTV did it really well. They had a cool background all the time, even though it was just tiny design. Anyway, the client that we were working with, she kept asking for background soup, right? And this was her term of putting something in the background.
Okay.
And I could not, for the life of me, get it right. No matter what I did. And I kept on trying to ask all the right kind of questions. I'm like, okay, when you're talking background soup, are you meaning, she's like, background soup, just everything, background soup in the background. And I'm like, okay. So I would try a whole bunch of different things. In the end, really what it came down to, and I couldn't get it. Like, it was so frustrating for both of us because she didn't know how to explain what she wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to verbalize the right way to get to the end result. And I think in the end, what she wanted was some kind of topographical map of the top of a, or like a bird's eye view of something in a garden that had like a topographical style.
Okay,
And we just couldn't get there. And it was like, background soup was what we kept saying. And it's one of those things.
So that's not a generic, that's not a universal term, background soup.
No. Well, sometimes people, they'll do things, they'll give you a design in crayon.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And again, this is a long time ago in my career. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. So they'll do it in crayon and they'll want you to try to
capture what they do a bit.
Or they'll measure things, with a ruler, and then they'll send you the ruler measurements, and you're like, okay, this is a design on a website, so we'll work it out in terms of how to reset that with pixels. And, you know what I mean? And a lot of that, again, is just, they're kind of fun, crazy moments. But
thank goodness technology's advanced a little bit since those days.
Yeah. But again, like you said, and kind of to wrap it up, I'm sure we're close to 10.
Mate, we're 12.
See? You didn't even say 10. That was
I was enjoying the conversation so much.
Sorry, as long as we stick to our new time.
Yeah.
But what you said, I think it hits home with the idea that, it's all part of that process.
It's collaboration, right?
Totally.
Yeah, it's collaboration. Like, we've got our ideas, and we're the experts in our field.
Yeah.
The client's got their ideas, and they may have a bit of expertise in that field as well.
Yeah.
And I think to bring it together, like PWD, we have an account management team who have a full scope with the client first. So I find from the BDM side of the business, if we get that part right, which we inevitably do, that generally speaking, the designs come back and we're on the same page for that kickoff meeting that we have, or the scoping meeting we have.
But the process is part of the joy too. Finding the path of how to take something that there's always that plan, and then there's kind of what happens, and then it's about trying to figure out how to navigate around a lot of these other factors to try to get back onto that track. So I think that's just part of the process.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Wishing you a wonderful days. Have a good day yourself, mate, and be lucky behind the glass door, listeners. Cheers.